The peace and joy of Jesus be with you all. My dear friends on social media, welcome to all of you. It's so great to be with you once again. We are into the 12th Ordinary Sunday of the year. And remember, Ordinary Sundays are times when we are looking at Jesus, focusing on Jesus, and very intently listening to Him. So therefore, let us open our hearts to Jesus. I invite you once more to open your hearts to Jesus and let Jesus speak to you as I share my thoughts and reflections with you on this beautiful Sunday, the 12th Ordinary Sunday of the year. And the theme for our reflection is the joy of following Jesus. The joy, to look at Jesus, to know Jesus, to love Jesus, brings about a lot of joy in your heart. And that is what happens when we really follow Jesus. So I'm going to share with you a few reflections on the joy of following Jesus. Now, in the gospel today, Jesus is alone and he's taking time to form his disciples. Formation is the key word. Jesus spent 3 years with his disciples and he formed them. He didn't write any books. He didn't ask them to read any books, but he formed them, asking them to focus on him. And he wrote his love, his message in their hearts. And it was so indelible that they never ever forgot it. So that is real formation. So in the formation of his disciples, Jesus is alone with them in the gospel today. And he's away from the crowd and he is praying. And his disciples are watching him. So you see how we learn from the reaction of the disciples. We also look at Jesus, we watch Jesus, we focus on Jesus. And then Jesus, in his prayer, he comes to them and asks them a question. And Jesus loved to confront his disciples. Confrontation is not a bad thing. In fact, confrontation is different from conflict. Confrontation is to help us to come to the knowledge of the truth. Confrontation is not a bad thing. Confrontation is to help us face reality, to come to the knowledge of reality and of truth. And confrontation invites us to make a decision. How wonderful. Confrontation invites us at the end to make a decision. Now, Jesus uses this beautiful technique to help his disciples face reality. He has to, as it were, knock them on the head to come to that reality of whatever he's teaching them. And today, he helps his disciples to come to that reality by confronting them in 2 stages. First, he asks them, "Who do the crowds say that I am?" Who do the crowds say that I am? So he's taking their focus onto the crowd. And then he himself gives them an answer. Let me read from the gospel. One day, Jesus was praying alone with only his disciples near him. And he asked them, "Who do the crowds say that I am?" And they answered, "John the Baptist, but others Elijah, and still others that one of the ancient prophets has risen." So he asks them a question and they answer. Now he's preparing them for the real punchline. And he now looks at them and says, "Whom do you say that I am?" Listen to what he says in step 2. Jesus said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" And then there was a pause, a dramatic pause, because God was working in this answer. And now something happens. Peter steps out and says, "The Christ of God. You are the Christ of God." What a dramatic explanation, what a dramatic answer that Peter comes out with. And that is what Jesus was waiting for. He waited for the Spirit to work in Peter when Jesus asked him that dramatic question, "Who do you say I am?" And Peter says, "The Christ of God." Now, what is the meaning of the word Christ? Actually, the word Christ is not Jesus' name. We say Jesus Christ, but actually that's not his full name. Jesus is his name, but the word Christ is the word that means anointed one, the Messiah, the one who's sent by God, the one who has been anointed by the Spirit and sent by God to his people. And then Jesus discloses, after explaining this to them, Jesus discloses something intimate about himself. Let me read. Jesus sternly ordered and commanded his disciples not to tell anyone about this, saying, "The Son of Man must undergo great sufferings and be rejected by the elders, chief priests, and scribes, and be killed. On the third day he will be raised." Wow! Now that is too much. That is shocking. That was more than dramatic. Jesus is not saying this so that he may gain their pity or sympathy. No. He is showing them how much he really loves them. He's showing them how much he really cares for them. He's showing them how much he serves them. He's showing them how much they will have to go through to love Jesus. This is the cost of loving a person, because he wants to tell them what it means to follow him. What does it really mean to follow Jesus? What does it really mean in our daily life, in your life, in my life, to follow Jesus? The joy of following Jesus will be at a great cost. And you and I know that in our ordinary human relationships, that when we love a person, we have to sacrifice a lot in order to really love that person and that person to love us. We see this in married life. We see this in family life. We see this in parents and children, children and parents. So here is then something tremendous in our life. It's the joy of following Jesus. It's the cost of following Jesus with great joy. But a cost that will bring great joy and not sorrow. It's not a painful thing to follow Jesus. It's a joy to follow Jesus. Joy, not pain. Joy, not self-pity. Joy, not fear at suffering. Because when you love a person, you'll go to any lengths to suffer for that person. In fact, there is no suffering when you love someone. In fact, when you love somebody, nothing is too painful to undergo for the beloved. Have you realized that? It is true. It is true. Look at your own life. It is very true. When you love a person, you will bear any suffering for that person. And St. John captures this most beautifully in his 15th chapter. In John chapter 15, verse 15, he says, "No greater love than this a person has than that he or she lays down his or her life for the beloved," for the friend. Now Jesus is saying this. John is quoting Jesus, word for word. No greater love than this a person has than that he or she lays down his or her life for the beloved. This is the joy of following Jesus. This is the joy Jesus experiences as he lays down his life for us. How marvelous! This is the joy of Jesus when he lays down his life for each one of us. This is his experience, and he is preparing his disciples from his own personal experience. As he experiences joy to lay down his life, For us, Jesus invites us to lay down our lives for Him and to experience the same joy. Just like a mother who goes through intense labor pains, but when she sees the little baby that she has brought forth, then there is no more pain. There is only joy, pure joy. I'm sure all of you mothers have experienced that. All of you fathers also, standing by your wives as they gave birth, and you receive that little baby. This is pure joy. Now, Jesus prepares His disciples to tell them something more. Let me read. He says this to His disciples. Then He said to them all, to His disciples, if anyone wants to become my follower, listen carefully, if anyone wants to become my follower, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. Wow. You see how Jesus is doing it in His own life, and now Jesus wants to share from the joy of His experience. So He's telling us reality. So let us look at the statement of Jesus. Let us pick out a few highlights from the statement of Jesus. First, to be His disciples. Jesus says, if any one of you wants to be my disciples, and He places it on the table there right in front of all of them. He says, if you want to be my disciples, number one, forget yourself. Wow. Will I ever forget myself? Isn't myself always the prime, dominant note in everything that I do and say? Jesus is telling us, if you want to be my disciple, forget yourself. Secondly, He says, if you want to be my disciple, forget yourself, take up your cross, whatever that cross may be. Thirdly, He says, take it up every day. Don't take it up once a year during Lent maybe or on Good Friday. No, take it up every day. Take it up daily. And fourthly, He says, in order to save your life, you have to lose it. Very enigmatic. To save, you have to lose. And then you will save it and regain it. Now, this is the secret of the joy of following Jesus. Very often, you know what we do? Very often, we focus on the difficulty. We focus on the problem. We focus on the pain. We focus on the size of the cross that we are carrying. We focus on the separation that it brings to each one of us from other people because we are carrying this cross. We focus on the separation it brings from enjoying material things. In order to love a person, we have to give up certain things. So we focus on the giving up of those things. You notice that when we have the wrong focus, then every obstacle becomes extremely painful. So what do? We need to focus on Jesus, the person. Jesus is a person. So we need to focus on a person. And when we focus on a person, then we move away from things and places. Our love is for a person, Jesus. Our suffering is united to a person, Jesus. Our purpose in life is for a person, Jesus. Our path is the path to a person, Jesus. Our ultimate desire for union is with a person, Jesus. Our losing is ultimately to gain a person, Jesus. Let me read again from the gospel. For whoever, says Jesus, for whoever wants to save their life will lose it. And whoever loses their life for my sake, will save it. There's Jesus focusing on Him as a person. Here then is the invitation to focus ourselves on Jesus. We need to refocus from things, from places to a person. Refocus from the cross of pain to the joy of union to a person, Jesus. And the lives of the saints. Look at St. Anthony, look at St. Francis of Assisi, look at Mother Teresa in our own day and age. They all focused on a person, Jesus. They did everything out of love for Jesus. And when they did everything out of love for Jesus, they gave up their own lives. And giving up of their own lives was a joy for them, not a pain. Listen once more to Jesus. Jesus says this to all of us. He addresses all of us now. And he says, if anyone wants to become my follower, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. Begin to start experiencing the joy of following Jesus. Begin that right now as I'm speaking to you. Detach yourself from the size of your cross, from the pain of the cross, from the separation of things and people, and start focusing on Jesus, the person, and the person of Jesus. And when we start experiencing the joy of following Jesus, you know, my friends, it is very, very rewarding. It is very fulfilling. It is very meaningful. And you know what? It is already heaven beginning here on earth. My dear friends, look at Jesus, the person. He's inviting you. He's inviting me to come follow him. Forget yourself. Take up your cross every day. Follow Jesus. Follow Jesus. Let's follow Jesus.